mango squash, fizzy water, because I'm trying to drink more water, but I'm not yet a fully fledged adult. But I have had a crazy year, and one thing I haven't done enough of in 2024 was document the journey. And in truth, yes, that was down to me being lazy with my personal podcast, but also that was just down to being very busy and being reactive. This year I've really made a point of trying to be proactive to projects and to things that are coming up so that I can do my best work possible. But there were so many curveballs this year that I'm going to get into that it just wasn't possible to be proactive because I did not know what was going to happen next. So we're going to get into what the last 12 months looked like for me, because every time I've done a diary entry like this, it's typically been the struggles, the hurdles, the barriers, the things that I've really been trying to figure out from scratch, essentially. And this year wasn't without those certain issues as well, and the natural pitfalls that just come with trying to start a business, a media outlet, and trying to create a personal brand. So yes, there were things I had to overcome and difficulties I had this year from a business aspect, but I want to focus on the things which were more positive this year, because there were a lot of them. And in truth, I haven't done a good enough job on reflecting on them. And even when I made the list of things that I'd done, it's insane. So we'll start with February, which was one of the goals I always had when I started my personal brand, was to be able to facilitate mum traveling around the world and trying to go to different countries that she hasn't seen before and experiences that she's never got to have previously. And I was fortunate enough to now be in a position where I could afford to take her to Budapest and to take her to the spas for Christmas and give her that experience to start the year. And it really put me in a good frame of mind for the next 10 months or so, because it put into perspective why I'm doing it, the fruits of my labour, and the fact that grinding on this brand for the last 3 years, where I didn't even have enough from the business to pay for a coffee, now I could pay for that trip. That was at least a small milestone. So I had to recognise that alongside the fact that I could actually go on the trip, and it was incredible as well to share that time with her and those experiences, because ultimately they're the things that you look back on. Even for this Christmas, I designed a lookbook for events throughout the year. Budapest, Cornwall, and fireworks night. And you realise that life eventually becomes reduced to photo albums. So I've been trying to do a good job of documenting the process of everything in my life. And even if that's just a single image of that evening, so be it. And I did that throughout the year and then put it into a lookbook to give my mum. So that was February, and that started things off very nicely for me. But then we roll into March and April time. Now this is the time that I fly out to Thailand. And it's about the time where it gets very cold in the UK. I've spent what seems like 8 months in just grey cloud and rain. And it's time for just blue skies, mango shakes, pad thais on delivery, fresh fruit, cop and cup, sawadee cap, 7-Eleven Gatorades, crab sticky rice, Kalman Gai. There are a million reasons why in April it is always nice to go to Thailand, because now I am in a privileged position where my work is online and I can do that. But that just opened up a phenomenal amount of opportunities for me, because I got to go to ONE FC in Lumpini Stadium. So not only feel the heritage of that place, not only feel the atmosphere of these kids from very, very deprived areas in Bangkok, screaming for the local hero that is now fighting for the title. The gold confetti ceremony, and I'm staring at a picture on my wall that I've taken ringside of the champion, just draped in the belt and the gold confetti, with the gold trim on her shorts, the white silk shorts. It's one of my favourite photos that I've ever taken, and that was one of the most incredible experiences ever taken. I rock up to this stadium and I didn't know what to expect. I just applied for photography at the time, and they gave me a wristband and they walked me in, and they walked me past the media section, and I was thinking, not really too sure where she's going with this. And then she points to the ring and says, "This is your spot." And this was quite early, so there weren't a lot of people there, but it was a live show as I've still walked in, because it was the third maybe fight on the card. And I've walked in and it's a little bit quiet. And there's just this spot next to the ring and Herb Dean. And I go, all right. He's like, all right. And it's quite funny because I've got it on my DJI, so you can pick it up on the recording. And that is quite literally how the dialogue goes. And I'm thinking, I don't really know what to do here. I've never been in this situation. I've been cage side, firstly, in MMA, but never at a promotion of this scale, and also never ringside, which is a major difference because you can quite literally lean in and get photos and get a lot better angles. And you're on top of the action. When they're leaning over the ropes, it's quite honestly on top of you. So I'm getting blood dripped on my arm and my Air Forces. And my first thought is, these Air Forces are so white. If I get blood in the stitching for this, it is very sore, but a cool story to tell nevertheless. In between the rounds, a man runs over to me before I can even look up with a wet towel, just pats it down off of my arms and then scrubs my shoes. And by the time I just look up, I'm perfectly clean again. Back in, round 2. It was like clockwork. It was a very surreal experience, but that was a phenomenal way to start Thailand, and that trip just continued to open my eyes into what I was really trying to curate with Casuals Corner. A brand which, of course, leans into MMA, but it leans into travel, it leans into design, it leans into food, all of these things very naturally, which I enjoy, and just highlighting it in different ways. And I really began to start doing that with my clothing, because when I went to Thailand, I then started experimenting with a few pieces. I went to AKA Thailand and met up with Mike Swick, did an interview with him. Really, really fascinating guy who's curated one of the best gyms, voted for as the best gym in Thailand for the last 4 years. A place where all the biggest names in the world go. Wiz Khalifa recently has been training there. You get people like Dan Blazarian, so some very big names. Avicii recently. And it bridges the gap between training and Thailand, but more so of a casual but luxurious vibe along with that. So it was very interesting to pick his mind and how he views business and the strategy behind it. Because something I learned from him was how to look at projects and give each layer more utility, and how to really think outside of the box instead of just seeing the average user journey of, okay, we want to open a pool and we're going to do an opening. How can we create an experience, a journey, a story, excitement behind every level? And he really pushed my mind into that space. So I teamed up with him to create a Casuals comic. You can see the ones in the background. I haven't got the AKA one there yet. It's not quite finished. But then I had the sketchings from the artist created into a t-shirt, which I then gave him as well because they look really cool on a print. So it was, even that was just stretching my mind. How can I create further utility from each project and do so in a way that I enjoy and I have fun with? That was how I started to do it. Then it got me thinking, right, okay, now I want to create some more clothing pieces. Now I want to experiment a little bit more. And Thailand's a great place to do it because it's a lot easier to get samples and to get things turned around a little bit quicker and a little bit cheaper as well. So I can get feedback loops a lot sharper. And then I thought, right, okay, I want to create a pop-up for Manchester. That was my goal, really. So when I was in Thailand, I was spending the first 6 weeks more so out of the 4 months I spent there, exploring a little bit more, meeting up with people, creating collaborative partnerships. I met up with James Mystery when I was out in Thailand, and we had a few cool trips that we went to. We went to Fight Circus. We've got so much to get into, but we have to get into that. So Fight Circus in itself. I'm with James Mystery, who's phenomenally talented, works with Red Corner MMA, who have absolutely smashed it this year. And Fight Circus were in town, so he knew a guy that worked at the event, so we went there, rocked up to work the event there, and we captured everything that went on. Now, I've never been to Fight Circus, and the best way to describe it would be quite literally the circus, WWE, and then real-life combat sport in a melting pot of all three with the health and safety standards of Thailand. And if you haven't been to Thailand, or Asia, more collectively, they're lower than the Western world. Let's just say that. So you can see some things which are quite a reality shock, especially in today's market in the UK. So a very interesting dynamic and vibe. And to cover that event was crazy because I got to see Blob Tang live in the flesh. And that really led to one of the most viral pieces of content I've ever had from an organic footage from myself, from Casual's Corner. That went more viral than I could have ever imagined, to be perfectly honest. I put up a video of a finishing sequence that he did in Fight Circus, where I was again actually ringside. Funnily enough, it was the second time that I was ringside. After 1FC, I was then ringside at Fight Circus. So quite the juxtaposition for sure. But regardless, just getting reps in where I can. And it is important to get better angles and to just be more comfortable in these environments so you can also know what you can and can't do and where you can and can't go. So I managed to get a good shot of this finishing sequence, and I posted on Instagram quite a long time after it, to be perfectly honest. Definitely a couple of months, a few months after it, thinking nothing of it. And it just went insane. It just went insane on my socials, and then it got picked up left, right and centre by just about every media outlet possible. It had ESPN, Sports Centre quote tweeting it, Theo Von was quote tweeting it. It just went insane to a level I could have never even really anticipated. On my own Instagram, it went to tens of millions. It's got something like 250,000 likes, I think, or 500,000 shares, or something ridiculous. And then it really opened my eyes to the potential of comedic elements or abstract elements or the both, quite simply. And then it started opening my eyes to, okay, I actually really enjoyed learning a little bit more about pro wrestling and the behind the scenes and actually seeing it up close. And seeing that is actually very impressive. First time I've ever seen pro wrestling up close. I never grew up as a massive lover of it, so I did get a different perspective and a much deeper appreciation. And then I watched a Vince Mann documentary, and I'm sort of reverse learning about the business and the storytelling and understanding these different characters and the heels and the baby faces. And whilst maybe this doesn't seem that important, I realise it's everything. It's everything when getting better at storytelling. Storytelling someone's brand, if it's my client, if I'm working with Nathaniel Wood or Lonnie Kavanagh on their content. Storytelling in that regard. If it's storytelling of my own brand, of my clothing, if it's creating characters within the Toe Wrestling Championships HQ, that's something we haven't even spoke about yet. We haven't even got into the toe wrestling. That will come later. Haven't even included that into my notes. Jesus. We've got so many twists and turns in this tale. So whilst I'm in Thailand, I spend the first chunk travelling, meeting new people, creating Food Fighter episodes with Kaz Crossley. That was a fun day that we spent together. Going fishing with James and going to Fight Circus. That was really fun. Meeting different people out there. Training at different gyms, getting different pieces of content. But then the second half of that was really spent in Bangkok, staying with my family, and then just trying to organise a pop-up for UFC Manchester. So for context, Nathaniel was fighting on the card, and the last fight that he had in Abu Dhabi, I went with him, which was the year previous in October. And in Manchester, he wanted me to come along and document the process as well and create content around the fight week, which I always enjoy doing, of course, anyway. And I was still in Thailand at this point. So the timing was going to be I land and then I unpack my bags, pack a suitcase for Manchester, and then go first thing up there, and then it's fight week for UFC Manchester. Because I kept delaying when I was coming back from Thailand, and then I came back on that week. So the difficulty with that was I wanted to do a pop-up in Manchester, of which I've never been to the city. I've never ran a pop-up. I've never sold a clothing piece. And I've never ran an in-person event for my own brand. But I said that I wanted to do one in Manchester whilst I was in Thailand. Now, the difficulty with that comes from the fact I wanted to firstly finish the Casuals comic, so have the artwork and the general design finished, edited and printed. Then I also wanted to get the templates for the clothing and make any adjustments, because trust me, there are a lot of adjustments, and that was a whole new learning curve this year. Learning about different fabrics, learning about different weights, different finishes to different products, different logistics to factor in. For example, if you want the 300 GSM vest, which is essentially a heavier duty vest, feels higher quality, less functional for sport, but maybe more for sort of casual wear like I wanted. Yes, you'll get X fill and X finish, but you also have to factor in that per piece, you then increase the weight, which is then the shipping costs. And then sometimes when you go higher shipping costs, you go larger packages, so lot longer delivery times. So all of these things are things I'm learning on the fly, but then trying to squeeze it in a time period where everything simultaneously turns up for UFC Manchester to a hotel location in the city I've never been in a window of about 3 days, and turns up in time to shoot the content and also take it to the actual spot itself. So there are a lot of logistics to balance. Now, like I said, it's hard to be proactive when a lot of these ideas I'm just coming up with on the fly and adding things to my plate. And do I sometimes run myself too thin and I could focus my attention on less things and do them better? 100%. But I also know sometimes how I operate and how I work. And I think of an idea and I get excited and I want to run with it. And if I want to run with it enough and commit to it, I'll commit enough hours. And there were a lot of days in Bangkok that, don't get me wrong, it was a lot of fun from start to finish, and just the conversation in general of what I'm even doing is surreal to a certain extent. But there were a lot of days I spent in Bangkok just at the desk going through manufacturers, back and forth conversations, sending drafts, sending templates, sending what I wanted, getting the templates, trying to work out logistics and colours and communications and making sure everything was perfect, because I didn't get the opportunity to have testers or samples. I didn't get that opportunity. They just had to be right the first time. So it was a lesson in being thorough in that preparation as well. So regardless, I'm flying back from Thailand, and then I messaged my mate Paul, who works at Amethyst Studios, and we'll come into the story a little bit later down the line as well with toe wrestling. But I said to him, would you like to... He wanted to go to the fight week anyway. He usually does. He's a hustler. He wants to get his face out and about, his work everywhere, and his opportunities expanded. So he always wants to be around those situations. And I told him, I want to do a pop-up. I want to create some cool content, and I want to really take advantage of being there that week. And he was fully down. So he understood the mission, that this was a last minute scramble putting things together, but he was exceptional throughout the process. So we had a hotel together, which is the one that I'm referring to when I'm waiting for things to rock up. Comic books, jerseys, down to small details as well. details that maybe weren't necessary in the general scheme of things, but I wanted to create an experience. And even if I didn't execute it the first time, how my grand plan would have it, I wanted to execute it on a certain level. And what I mean by that is to have small details like a wristband when you walked in. So you had a nice looking slick wristband, which also had a QR code to pre-order any of the pieces that you saw there. I also wanted to have a speaker there so we can have a chat and a live Q&A. I wanted to try and at least create some sort of an atmosphere there. So that was one of my goals, really. And he got that. But also the week was just insane from start to finish. I get there and I knew it was going to be hectic. I knew we were going to wait for parcels to rock up and try and find a studio. I hadn't even found a place really at that point. Try and bring all these pieces together. But on top of that, it was just a ridiculously mental fight week. So the fight week starts with the whole kerfuffle between Mohamed Mokaev and Manel Kape, of which is happening 10 foot away from me. And we're in this lovely 5-star establishment in the middle of Manchester. Beautiful hotel, actually, to be honest. Really nice spot. That's one thing that people don't realise with the UFC. You will get put up at nice hotels. I know if you're a fighter, you can't really do much about it, but the buffets are always fantastic. Good pools, more times than not, they have a sauna. They have nice facilities, always good gyms. Always 5-star spots, so something that I've been fortunate enough to experience a couple of times, and really nice touch. So coming off the back of that, they have that fight, which is at the start of the week. So things just start weird anyway. And then it continues to just snowball. One of the days I'm in the gym at 2 a.m. because we're having really flat out days as well. I've spoke about this in other pieces of content, but me and Paul know that this week is a hustle. From the minute we get up, from the minute we go to bed, we've got work to do. Whether it's editing, filming, creating, scheduling, whether it's just chatting to people, and I don't like the term networking because it seems superficial. But just chatting to people that we either follow online or we know of or we've wanted to speak to or pick someone's brain on something. There's always those people at these fight weeks, because what you get with MMA is you get teams that come along from different areas of the world. So, for example, at UFC Manchester, I bumped into Juliana Pena. So not only do I get to have a conversation with her, but also she drops the exclusive that she's fighting for the title against Raquel Pennington whenever that fight originally was scheduled for. And I get the exclusive at 2 a.m. in Manchester whilst I'm having a workout, which was a moment that when I got back to the hotel, I thought, oh yeah, no one has that information right now. I was feeling like I could create somewhat of a meltdown of having a UFC title fight exclusive to put on Twitter. But in truth, I would always rather someone's ability to trust me not repeating it, even if I knew they were okay with it, to be honest, than actually putting it out there. My MO is never to be that guy of, I'm going to tell you that this fight is exclusive and it's breaking. I've had that a few times now this year, not even with that example, but obviously with Nathaniel and Lon, I've got good relationships with not only them, but their coaches or even their managers in some instances. So I'll sort of know of things happening, but it's never my MO to create exclusive fights. That's not really what I'm trying to achieve. I think a lot of what I'm trying to achieve is also to try and say, yeah, I like leaning into certain facets of MMA, but I'm not trying to be a journalist. I'm not trying to have journalistic integrity and bring to you breaking news. And so don't view me as such, because I don't ever pretend to be. I don't ever pretend to be. I think sometimes, as much as I think Ariel's one of the best, and he has been forever, sometimes where people get annoyed with him and have a criticism, which I think is fair, is sometimes he wants to say, I'm a journalist and hold me to that brush, and sometimes he sort of leans more so on the other side. And I watched a documentary recently where they highlighted his strengths, but also highlighted that, and I think that's a fair critique, but I don't want that. I'm not trying to say I am this, so that's why I'm trying to stay out of that topic. But I guess naturally you blend the boundaries sometimes, and you have to kind of check what beat are you marching to, and is it the one that you want to be seen in ultimately. So kind of looping back to the conversations in Manchester, was very fortunate to chat with Eric Nixick, which is someone that I really wanted to speak to for a long time. I really wanted to pick his brain for a very long time, to be perfectly honest, because this is someone that I've looked into a lot. How he views the game, his approach on the game, his mindset as someone which is more of an outsider from MMA. He wasn't an athlete first. And also someone that's coming from a mindset of a different major sport. So he's coming from a perspective first of American football, which is ran in a very structured certain way. Now, there are a lot of elements that can be transferred over in certain aspects of MMA. So I was interested to hear his outlook on that. And also his approach of when I'm picking his brain and I'm saying to him, this is essentially Moneyball. And he was saying, where did I grow up? And I said, you came from Vegas. And then I'm sort of seeing the penny drop in live speed. And I'm realising I understand it a little bit better now, why I resonate with his approach to the game. And sometimes it's just more statistical. It's playing the percentages more often than not. And I think that was interesting to pick his brain about that, because speaking to all these people across the year, whether it be George Hickman in Bangtao, whether it be Eric Nixick in UFC Manchester, whether it's Brad Pickett or Ashley Grimshaw all year round at Great Britain's top team, I'm always super fortunate to pick the minds of people that have been around this game forever, which will lead me into a conversation which I had with Uriah Hall, which was really cool in Macau, which we'll get to a little bit later. But speaking to Nixick was something I'd wanted to do for a long time, because there are some people in the game which is cool to, if you bump into, to say hello and have a conversation, whatever else. But there are some people that you, for whatever reason, want to pick the mind of, or maybe have a question for, or it had been not too far removed that I'd been watching the breakdown of how he beat, or how he game planned, to beat Israel Adesanya. So I had a few questions around that. So super grateful that I had those experiences. But this is just another reason that Manchester was just very, very weird. Then we had the whole episode of where Giga Chikadze thought that I was a spy for Arnold Allen's camp. That was very bizarre. When I was in the sauna with him, and me and Brad were just chatting, and it was him and Benil Dariush, and we're just chatting to Benil Dariush super casually, pardon the pun. And then in some interview down the line, he said, Arnold Allen had spies, or something along those lines. And I think it was in reference to that, which is just a funny sprinkle of a story to add in there, and just another aspect of why this was weird. When I was playing catch up on the media and I saw that, it made me laugh wholeheartedly. But then we had the actual pop-up itself. So again, very last minute, very scrambly, managed to get a studio, managed to get a photography studio in the heart of Manchester. It was actually a very good location. It was actually quite a cool spot. Not perfect, but it had enough. Had a sofa to film the talk on, had a couple of clothing rails to display a few pieces, and then I had the small details there, like I mentioned before, like the bracelets. I had the sleeves to put the comics in. I had the posters which I'd printed out of some of my favourite photos from across the year. I had them stamped in casuals. So I had everything in place really to go. I just didn't know if anyone was going to turn up. I tried to create some promotional pieces in the build-up, but again, very reactionary, so it was hard. And this is actually one of my favourite pieces of media that I created, was just in the build-up to this with Paul, is we saw the Leon Edwards video of where he does a trick shot in Manchester in a park, and he boots this ball from miles away on the volley with a basketball, and it goes perfectly in the hoop. And we're thinking of videos of how can we create a fun promo? How can we get people engaged, keep it enticing, keep it topical? And I'm just sort of racking my brains on minimal to no sleep whatsoever, because we're getting up at 6, 7 a.m. every day to hit the buffet, because it was phenomenal. So I would get up at 6, get to the buffet for 7, get a couple of rounds in at the buffet and do some work, just scribble down what I'm doing for the day, have a workout, come back to the buffet, finish up about 10 a.m. when it finishes, 11 a.m, have a coffee, bump into a couple of people, have a couple of chats, then get the work day started. and then go straight through until about 4 or 5 a.m. most days, and then maybe catch an hour or two here and there. But regardless, we wanted to create a promo video, so we said, right, okay, why don't we try and leverage what's already gone viral in this week with Leon's basketball video, and let's try and create something similar. So we said, fine. So we went to buy a basketball from Sports Direct, and I said, why don't we try and find a court, and I'll just hit on the volley in, or I'll just kick it from across the court and try and get it in and create something around that. It was like, all right, cool, let's do that. So then we buy a basketball and we think, right, now we need a basketball court. So we Google a basketball court near us that's just open and free that we can just rock up and film this thing. And there was one in a very, I can't remember the name, but a very shady part of Manchester. And I said to Paul, who used to live around those areas, what about here? He said, no. Bearing in mind that we're going there with a Sony FX3, which I think brand new is maybe a 10 grand camera. I think, don't quote me on that, but it's definitely multiple thousands. Not to mention, obviously, then my DJI and my camera and equipment and whatnot as well. So our phones. So got a lot of equipment on us and a fresh set of casuals clothing. So hot property. And he said, no, we cannot go there. So anyway, we put on another place and he said, okay, let's try here. We rock up and it is completely packed. Completely packed. It's the summer holidays as well, and it's not a nice day. It's grey, it's cold, and it's windy, but this basketball court is absolutely packed. There's about 8 different rings, one on either end, and then loads on the sides, and every single one has an independent game. And we rocked up and thought, this is less than ideal. It's super grey, it looked like it was about to piss down. Then it begins to start raining and we think, right, we can't film it here, so we have to go and find another basketball court. We looked around the corner just because we saw a college and it was closed down because it was the summer holidays. And we saw if we could sort of find our way strategically into this closed premise of a college to film this video. Alas, we could not. We tried to find our way and tiptoe the borderline of trespassing, but also creating a video that we very much needed. Very fine line, and getting to that age now where it's a lot less charming when you do these things. When you're sort of 12 and you do these things, a lot more charming. Can't really get away with as much, but not that it was anything crazy. Regardless, we come back to the court and we just say, right, we're going to have to wait this out. We're going to have to just wait until someone clears. But I'm not kidding when I say these were full up of people just playing in the heart of Manchester on this basketball court, and I am there head to toe with my new basketball set, casual set, and a brand new basketball, not trying to even do a basketball trick shot, trying to do a football trick shot, of which it is now pissing it down. So now it is just steaming it down, and there is one person that's just removed from this side of the court. So I thought, right, I'm just going to get on and claim it. So now I'm trying to execute this trick shot, but there is a full park of people watching. And I'm trying to create some sort of a promo. So I'm trying to hit a line or drop a line. And I came up with the line of, Leon Edwards is not the only man with a left peg in Manchester this weekend. And then I would just hit the trick shot. And I just did that off the first take. I didn't try and schedule a line or anything. I just took the first take and saw what I would say and then thought, actually, that's not a bad line. Let me run with that. But it didn't take one goal, as you can imagine, because I'm wearing new shoes. It's getting exceedingly slippier, and it's a fresh basketball, so minimal grip on this thing as well, and I am just going arse over tit. I remember about 10 years ago on my playgrounds there was a basketball and I just chipped it in from across the court, because I played football my whole life and it's not actually that difficult to sometimes hit a basketball a long distance because they can absolutely fly, and if you get a nice little chip on it, I just remember it not being that difficult. Long time ago, different thing that I was trying to achieve. So I said to my mate, it's not going to take many goes. It took a few goes and people were watching every single go. And then I would say we were close to 100, he reckons. It didn't feel like that. It felt like a lot. And he said to me, we've had about 100 goes. And I said, well, law of averages, we're getting closer. And I said, you know what, this time I'm actually going to have the comic book in my pocket so that when I do this trick shot, I can then get it out. And every time I'd done this and failed, I was just trying to kick it directly in, or I was trying to flick it and then kick it on the first kick. never juggle it, never do anything exciting whatsoever. I would just try and chip it in or kick it up once and then kick it or knee it in. And then on this go, after my friend says that, I flick the ball up, I do 3-4 kick-ups, I knee it twice, and then inside of the foot, just cushion it, straight off the backboard, swish, get the comic straight out, hit the promo, get a comic, get a jersey, keep it casual, walk off, and I just thought, thank goodness we got a cool moment. We got a cool shot that we can run as a promo. And I'm so happy that we got it. We went away from the park. We left straight after, went back, looked at the clip, and it was absolutely perfect. Paul nailed it, capturing it, the zoom, the crash zoom that he did, also the pan in it, the aspect ratio he shot in was perfect so he could cover more distance and create more detail in it. Put a fantastic lot over it and had a cool promo video. Didn't even perform that spectacularly. However, I never did enough promo on that week, so I've started using more already, and that video performed very well and did 40,000. So just repurposing that. So that was the video that we did in the build-up. Then we had to actually execute on the pop-up, which all in all was super fun. We had probably about 15 people come, all in all, which I was super grateful for. I was super grateful that anyone popped up. And we also had Adam Lusby, who I would say is one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in all of mixed martial arts. I don't think there's anyone that does what he does better, in my opinion. I don't think there is. He's very down the line, matter of fact, likes to actually understand what the literature says rather than what the trend says, and is very open to being wrong and to adapting his mindset. And I think it's very important. And he's not emotional about strength and conditioning either, which is sometimes people's problem. But managed to have his expertise for 15 minutes at the pop-up. He got there early, actually even helped me set up, which I was super grateful for. And then we had a great chat. People listened. Then we did a Q&A afterwards. And then I gave out some of the jerseys, gave out some of the comics, had a little chat with everyone. And everything actually went very smoothly. And I was on a bit of a high after that because it was cool to actually see people in real life, be able to actually put some faces to some usernames, and to do the first in-person step of a community build-up, because that's always what I wanted to do eventually. So now leading into UFC London, which we can talk at the end, that I want to do a pop-up. Now I've got a lot of good reps and good experiences. But regardless, we go from Manchester, pop-up, then of course we have the fight day, actually going to the event. I managed to get in the middle of a weird altercation with Javid Bashrat and MVP, and Volkanovski rugby tackling them, and me managing to get my hands on the footage and it going incredibly viral. That was super weird, but what was funny is I made the video about what happened after Volk had made a video about what had happened, but I hadn't seen this. But I didn't realise in his video he didn't refer to any names, and he just said, I don't know if I should say and whatnot, but he told the story of what was happening. I didn't know any of this. I just made a video about what had happened, but I'd included all the names. And then everyone that had seen Volk's video then also flocked to my video and said, this is who he was referring to, which I thought was funny that I accidentally had dropped that. But regardless, that was a very weird experience. And also circles back to an experience which I had earlier in Thailand, where not only did I mention about creating the clothing pieces, but I also created a one-of-one personalised piece for Volkanovski. So I teamed up with an artist and had a really cool printing made for a t-shirt, and then I got the front embroidered with the food fighters, and then I went and hand delivered it to Volkanovski in Phuket, where he did a seminar at Bang Tao. So I went and met with him, spent the day with him, which was cool, or spent the morning, with him. Met him at Bang Tao. And then we spent a little time just watching his training. He was training with Kiefer Crosby at the time. and then went back to his hotel where I just got ready and whatnot, and then I handed him his t-shirt, met his videographer Jake, who is phenomenally talented and who's done a fantastic job of exploding his socials this year, so shout out to him. But that was cool to be able to do that, and just another wrinkle to this year. Circling back to UFC Manchester, obviously we then had Nave perform on that. He got the win. It was a very good card. Manchester was just very bizarre from start to finish. There's a few details that I can't include in that, which I have to miss out. But again, hectic nevertheless. Then whilst after sort of coming down off of that, it was pretty much then a straight turnaround to go into Polaris with Nathaniel, where he competed against Cameron Elsa, and doing a couple of weeks of GBTV filming, to then go into Bangkok. Going to Bangkok for karate combat, and then being pitside for that, literally at the end of the road from where my family live in Bangkok, which was insane. So I stayed at my family's, I saw them for Christmas, and then I also could go and do some work. So I met up with some really big Thai creators, Bearded Travels, who does a phenomenal job of creating Muay Thai content originally, but now more so travel and Thai content, which is something I want to lean in towards this year. So got to speak to him, pick his brain, and then go to karate combat with him. Was fortunate enough to speak with President Awesome multiple times this year on the podcast. So to go and meet him in real life, was really, really cool. And then even have an interview with him pitside after everything had settled, about everything that was going on and the war between One and karate combat in Bangkok with the Muay Thai crossover, was a phenomenal experience. And also meeting the matchmaker at Karate Combat, who is one of the longest listeners to the MMA Creators podcast as well. So it was cool to have that full circle moment. What was even more full circle was then, which is probably the biggest event which really happened this year, which was UFC Macau. So Lon was making his UFC debut, and I was in Bangkok, and then went over to create content for Lon, to go and help him with his socials and also document that and be in his corner to again create more documentation of the process and tell the story, and to essentially help him turn into the superstar that he is and has curated. But just my job to help storytell that in context of social media platforms, which I believe I could easily do because I understand the platforms and he has all the ingredients. So I'm a very firm believer in that's a high possibility. So I went to UFC Macau, but the reason why this was such a special trip and why this was such a full circle trip for me was, many people won't know this, the first ever photo I took in the MMA space, period, full stop, was from a borrowed camera from my friend who got me into photography, and my closest friend who's like second family to me, one of my closest friends who's like second family to me, who got me into MMA, and it's at his amateur fight where he's striking the pads and Lonnie's holding the pads for him. And the day I got back from the Macau trip was the day that that picture was 3 years old. So everything I'm about to say is so fascinating to me because it's such a weird full circle moment. Because when I went out to Macau, not only did I go and I got that experience, but my friend, who is also Lon's housemate and who trains with him and who's like my family, came on the trip as well. And we've been going on holidays together since we were 17, going to Zante back in 2017. And we've been in each other's lives for a long time. So it wasn't anything new for us in a certain way. And then my other friend as well, who I've known for the longest time, also came along with us, who's getting into photography and videography as well. So it was a really, really cool moment. But to be a part of Fight Week, that hands-on, to be a part of going to another side of the world. I've been to Abu Dhabi before, so that was very different, but China is always a stark contrast to anywhere in the world, even if it may be Macau, which is more a dressed up version, and it's known as the Vegas. And it is in a lot of ways, but there's still deep elements of their culture ingrained. And it's a fascinating place, and I had an incredible week. So again, not only could I see the week a lot more hands-on. I saw a lot of elements in Manchester, but when you're in someone's corner, you get access to a lot of different levels that you don't, that if you're just in the fight week or helping someone with their media, unless you're the main event, that is. So I got to see the media, the cameras, the clothing, the fittings, the interviews behind the scenes. I got to see the weight cuts. Petr Yan sweating next to me, hitting pads as he's doing his weight cut. Walking past all of these superstars. It was the same in Abu Dhabi, where you've got Kamaru Usman and Islam Makhachev and Khamzat Chimaev and Daniel Cormier all walking past you. And it puts you in a mindset of being dialed in for these times as well, and knowing you've got a job to do. And I think that's the mindset I went with when I went to Macau. I have had it now where I've had these experiences before, and I'm very grateful for them. But now I've experienced them before, I know what to expect, and I know how I can refine the experience to enjoy it, but also get the most out of it from a work perspective. And I really think that I did a much better job of that, at least in that week. I went to the UFC Macau gym, which is unopened, and I did a tour with them, which was a really cool experience, because I thought it was just going to be a small gym, if truth be told, but it was a panoramic view all across Macau. And I got to do a private session with them on the pads, and then I got to hold pads for my friend, and then we went to one of the local spots there which did phenomenal traditional Macanese food, which is a blend between Chinese and Portuguese, and we got unbelievably taken care of. I had the pleasure of meeting up with Ali Mack, who's absolutely smashed it from a marketing perspective in MMA this year. Again, meeting people in these fight weeks and creating content was always things I wanted to do. People that I genuinely wanted to meet. People that I wanted to actually pick the brain of. People that I actually wanted to share a meal with for whatever reason. So we filmed that after the training session, and then we went back into the hotel and I filmed the weight cutting process. And in that day, it was a really sobering moment, because I couldn't process really what was happening in live speed, because there was so many things happening. But after that day, that was when I thought, right, okay, this is exactly what I wanted to craft. I wanted to be able to travel the world, train, go to cool places, eat at nice places, speak to people, be with friends along the process of fight week and helping them create content. People that I want to be with, I get to be with. I get to be with Lon, Colton, Ash, Frank, Oscar. I get to be with these people. Or whether it's Nathaniel, Brad, Gary, Ash, I get to be with these people around fight week. And then all of that, and then film and create content on the back end, of which I would then post on my socials as well. So that was the ideal day for me, and I had people documenting me at different points of that day. I had my friend with me creating photos and videos, and thought, cool, that's perfect. That's exactly how I'd like a day to look. And it takes a lot of years, graft, leverage to get there, but I'm at a position now this year where I'm thinking, right, let me lean fully into leveraging everything I can, leveraging actual finances, the obvious one, leveraging labour with personal assistants and editors, leveraging media with my own work, leveraging being more efficient, just myself, leveraging that is a huge thing. And then also in smaller ways, like using that leverage to get a better computer and operating system so I can edit more and post-produce more, and just sort of reverse engineering. That's really the goal for this year. Because like I said, when I was in Macau, I was truly grateful for everything. And that felt the truest moment of what I'd tried to achieve. And the fact that I was with friends as well was just the absolute icing on the cake. It made it infinitely better. Because as fun as all of these things are that I've got to experience, I've done them all by myself for the most part. Everything's by myself. And what you realise is when you don't bounce these memories off people, or you don't experience them with similar people frequently, maybe you share them with people at the time, but you don't see those people or speak with those people or know those people on a level, you lose these memories. So not only is it more enjoyable in the actual live speed, but you lose these memories, and it's fun to do it with friends. And it just so happens that one of those friends is the one performing in the UFC, and another one of those friends is his housemate who wants to travel the world and watch him perform, and the other one of those friends is someone who I'm very close friends with who wants to continue his love of videography and photography, of which he's phenomenally talented. So he documents the process with me as well. So of course these things are phenomenally fortunate, and you have to have that, but that's really what I want to lean into this year, because Macau in itself could be an own video, because there was so many things I got to experience which rounded out my knowledge for the game. To make the walk from the back room, from getting your hands wrapped, to walking up the stairs, to seeing the curtain, to them stripping it back, to them saying 5, 4, 3, 2, walk, walk, to the music playing, the lights just beaming as you walk in. It's like a white noise, people screaming your name, you being the hometown hero for Lonnie, on his hometown, his home return. Just going through those experiences and those emotions, and it just helps me to be better at my job exponentially. How I create content, but also how I storytell, also how I resonate with fighters and what they're going through. I haven't been through it personally, but as close as you can get, right? I've seen it through a friend and witnessed it firsthand, so I can at least understand the small details that are going on, even down to the fact that when you're getting your hands wrapped backstage and you're hitting pads or you're chilling and whatnot, you have a commission on you, eagle-eyed, and the commission was lovely, really nice fella, but you just have a man basically staring at you. They give you the rules meeting and whatnot, but if you go to toilet, you have to let them know. If you get anything out your bag, they're watching you, and it's just tiny aspects like this that you'd only learn that if you go through the process. The fact that when you get into the back room, they have this vampire-looking steak thing that you shove into your gloves and stretch it out. Tiny detail, almost irrelevant, but something that you wouldn't know unless you've gone through that experience. And it took a few days after I came back, but when I did, I realised I'd never really had a moment like that I needed to sort of let settle in. Everything that happened with my friends being there, with what Lon achieved, with the fact that I could be a part of it and be cage-side and document it and then create the content, and the content to go viral, it to get millions of views, and all of these different things happened. It took a few days to really absorb what had happened and really process and think, right, okay, I'm getting to that next level now where I'm executing on things of which I've always said, but at a slightly different operating system, or a very different operating system, to be honest, on a more global stage, on a more global version of metrics when I'm talking views. All of these different elements personally, just in regards to a business perspective. So it's been crazy to review on, and there's so many things I missed out. Getting to speak with Bisping in Manchester on a more personal level, getting to chat with him at the bar in Manchester was something I wanted to do for a very long time, because there are some people that I don't care to get photos with people or selfies with people or anything like that. I want to either A, work with people in a work capacity so that we're on the screen together and we're actually doing work for work's sake, or I'm chatting to them on a more authentic level where it's the first time and I haven't got a camera in my face and it can be a lot more candid. And sometimes it's a fight, because you do want to tread the line between being one of those people that creates and captures these moments to document and share and tell a story, and also understand that they have good viral potential, but also have an authentic meeting with someone the first time that you encounter each other. So I always try and tread that line. And the reason I say that is because when I was chatting with Bisping in the bar, he goes to me as he's sort of sitting back, and I'm with Nathaniel. We're about to go for dinner, I think we were at the time. And he sits back to me and goes, "Oh, Will, keep it casual." And I said to him, "You don't understand how much I would love to get that soundbite right now and just have that plastered on things, but I'm not going to." And he said, "Oh, no, you should." And I said, "You know what? I'm not going to. I'm not going to be that guy. I'm just not." every ounce of me did want that video and audio soundbite of Bisping just hitting a keep it casual. And I've had that a few times this year. And that's one thing that I'll say to anyone that's listening or anyone that's creating a brand in any regard is the value and power in a slogan, a tagline, a catchphrase, whatever you want to call it, however you want to dice it up in your own head is whatever you can call it, but it's imperative. With Lon, we're really leaning into the NSO, ninja shit only. That's his whole thing, that's his whole vibe, leaning into that. With myself, keep it casual. The guys at Energize show on my first ever Cage Warrior show pull me aside just before I leave and say, you need a sign off. Keep it casual. That's perfect. I've never finished a video or a post without saying it since. And it is imperative, as I say, because that's how people will remember you. That's the jingle. That's the lasting nugget that they have in their head. And also, it rounds things off. It just signs things off. It creates a trademark, a brand mark. It creates a audio branding, if you like. And you don't realize how many brands have those until you look out for them. So that is everything, really. Keep it casual. Just lean into that this year. Lean into storytelling. That's really the main 3 words for this year is storytelling. Lean into the experiences. All of these things that I share here, I feel, as much as it sounds cringy and trite, but it feels a lot safer. I feel like I'm not judged. I'm just chatting to my diary, essentially. I'm just letting you know what's happened. There's no judgment. I don't like sharing these stories sometimes because I think for a lot of British people, you never want to seem as if you're arrogant or gloating or making it me. But what you realize is if a brand is you and you're trying to storytell as much, you have to do these things. And I've seen a lot more people online, even TikTokers who are doing tremendously well. And it was a video the other day where someone had mentioned that they'd watched his videos and he made a whole video about it and it went crazy viral. And it made me think, I never do videos like that because I just never felt comfortable with them. But the truth of it is, if I did lean into that, there is a lot of stories there for me to tell. The fact that Conor McGregor this year was sharing my stories onto his page. The fact that I met up with Uriah Faber at UFC Macau, and not only he's telling me how he used to box llamas at his mate's farm, his plans for his business that he's got coming up over the next 10 years, and the projects that he's creating in MMA, which are fascinating. Millions, billion-dollar projects that he's got on the horizon. Having a very good chat with him in UFC Macau, and I'm realizing that I'm not doing a good enough job storytelling. And I think deep down there's this place of you don't want to seem arrogant and everything. I mentioned this tall poppy syndrome, I believe it's called. I've heard Israel Adesanya mention that before. And maybe this year I just need to lean into it and just be more comfortable with, listen, I try and be a decent person where I can be. I try and be peaceful. I try and keep myself to myself. I try and be polite and respectful for the most part, and I try and be honest for the most part. And I'm not perfect. I try and evolve where I can and try and improve where I can. And try and do right by those who I love and cherish the most. Outside of that, of course, I'll make mistakes, but I'll try and get better. And I think I'm getting to a point now where I'm comfortable in myself, where I know, okay, I'm at least trying that. So if people misinterpret me or they take something out of context or they see a snippet here or they see a soundbite or hear my voice or make a snap judgment in any way, it's jarring, he's ugly, it's this, it's that, whether it's visual, whatever it may be. I just try and do whatever I think's right by the business, its growth, and the ultimate goal of just doing whatever I need. Just embracing Henry Cejudo a little bit more. Not to the full level of cringe, but doing things to a level of cringe that I would never do before. Skits, memes, not ones that are truly inauthentic to myself. Of course, they can be me at the end of the day, but leaning into things that I just would have never have done before. Things I would have never felt confident. I would have felt, they're a bit cringeworthy. but doing it in a way that is tactful, doing it in a way that's leaning into myself, doing it in a way where I can leverage bigger audiences authentically, which comes back to proactive, leverage, and storytelling. Those are the three main words, and I know I've jumped around everywhere in this diary entry, but those are the main three words for this upcoming year. Proactive, leverage, storytelling. Storytelling, leverage, proactive. Leverage, proactive, storytelling. Any which order. If I prioritize those three words this year, I believe I'll be able to make exponential gains. If we're talking superficial metrics of social accounts, I would say 220,000 on Instagram and 400,000 on TikTok. Superficial, just metrics. But outside of that, that's not really what I'm looking to do. I'm looking to establish Food Fighters, Casuals Clothing, establish the UFC London pop-up, establish the best storytelling that I've ever done, lean into quality this year. Yes, my quantity is going to be increased tenfold, but in the back end, it's actually decreased 100-fold because I'm becoming more proficient with my operations, more streamlined with everything I do, and also more leveraged. I'm giving more hours to my personal assistant who's taking more workload and creating more time in my life to create more content. And then also buying the new laptop, which means that I can edit at the speed of light now. So if I have an idea, or if I'm scrolling through a piece of content and I want to chop 3 clips in, add a piece of trending audio and add a storytelling aspect with some text and create a clip in a couple of minutes, I can do that now. And now I've been doing that with my Food Fighters, and I create a video, like I just said, me scraping steak juices onto the plate, and it's got 100,000 views as I'm sitting it. So leveraging the crumbs, leaning into the reality, leaning into authenticity, storytelling, with quantity, with quality, being proactive, being ahead of the game, actually planning, okay, what would I like to do for this shoot coming up for the pop-up for London? How would I like to engineer it? Have I got the Casuals comic in place? Not just in place so it's turning up on the last day, but is it in place so that I can have it a week or 2 early, so that if I want to do types of photo shoots in London or integrate it into content, I can do that beforehand, so that in the build-up to UFC London, I can drop those elements. That's what I mean by proactive, not reactive. I guess I didn't have enough reps and I didn't have the skill of being organised to be proactive this year. I just didn't have it. I've been working on it for... I'm not even good at being organised yet. I will identify as such at the end of this year, indefinitely. But this is something I've worked on since I was 10 years old. I always said, oh, next year I'm going to make sure I have my pencil case and my pencils and my school uniform the day before and have my books. And no, in school I never did that. And then I did it in secondary school, and then I did it at uni, and then I did it when I was a personal trainer, and I've never done it. And then I've tried to do it with Casuals Corner, and I've never done it. And I've finally started slightly carving the initials, the hieroglyphics into the rocks, if you like, of this habit, etching it into stone after many, many years of trying to sharpen the tool and it being terrible. And we're at the very fundamental stages of that. But if I master that skill, if I put 10,000 hours into being organised this year, I will be at a level that no one could even comprehend where I'm at currently. I believe so. Undeniable. Undeniable quantity across Food Fighters, Casuals Clothing and Casuals Corner. Undeniable quality throughout travelling content, Thailand content, training content, podcasting, topical news and commentary, breakdowns, and then clothing and storytelling off the back of it. Executed daily, executed at scale, with quality, in different capacities. Yes, some may be short clips which are more angled to create a nice atmosphere and a nice vibe and storytell around the brand of the atmosphere we create, of the lifestyle I want to live. Maybe that's a morning I spend in Thailand just more focused on the visuals and the vibe of the video. Or maybe it's a more constructive piece where I actually give a complete thorough breakdown of the inside out process of the jersey from start to finish. Whatever that looks like, different angles, different elements, but getting the infrastructure in place, being efficient with the systems, being efficient in my communication, being efficient in my accounts, my finances, are they in line? Have I got my accounts in order by the financial end of the year? Is everything set up to my banking payment structure so that when the accountant asks for the files, I can simply just export it and it will auto-populate for me? Monzo Business Tool has done a phenomenal job at that. Am I dollar cost averaging investments into... I always am playing the Ethereum long-term game because I believe in network effect and I believe in the utility of the blockchain, and I believe in the long-term play for Ethereum is just going to be, because of the network effect, it eventually leads. That's my gamble that I'm making, and essentially happy everything will go to zero, but I play out on that hypothesis that I've had from the start till the end. So I'll continue to just invest dollar cost average in Ethereum. Now, dollar cost average is basically working out what is affordable for you to invest. Is it £1? Is it 10 grand a month? And then scaling it back to the portfolio that you want to invest in and doing it slowly over time. That's dollar cost averaging. Like I said, is it 10p? Is it 10 grand? It's just working out what's feasible for your budget requirements. That's why it's always the conversation that will always come up in investments. Really, what I've learned from investment is I feel like I've learned I have barely even started in this game, but I've learned a lifetime's worth of work right at the start of the game because of the people I've been able to speak to and what I've been able to read. Essentially, you have the lower yield stocks, which on average have spat back somewhere between 7 to 9, I think it is, percent since they began, since the war, during the war. So you're going to get a return of probably about 8% consistently year on year. Or you have the more higher volatility things. So are you someone that's playing the longer game and wanting to just commit for a longer time and just reap the benefits of the lower yield? Then you're going to invest in essentially like the US stock market and the flipping S&P 500. But then you have people in the short term who are trying to make bigger wins and investing in more volatile assets, cryptocurrency being the main one. Then there is sort of a middle ground, I do believe, where that's the hypothesis I draw to Ethereum. So that's what I'm going to do this year as well. It's just dollar cost average investments into Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin, just as I believe that will continue just to be the staple, and then Ethereum, like I said, for the utility of the blockchain. Because what people don't realize is with the introduction, or not the introduction, I should say, but with the increase in use of AI, the blockchain is going to become more essential than ever. This is what people don't realize. And the mistake people are currently making is they're being resistant to AI. Now, sure, be wary and understand the limitations, understand the drawbacks, understand the damages, the fallback that can come from it, sure. The same way that you should understand that scams can be prevalent on the internet. But don't disregard the internet, is what I'm saying, and don't disregard blockchain technology. Now, are there going to be meme coins that people do rug pulls over and essentially try and create these lucrative projects, and then they don't do anything with them and they don't create any utility or any value, and then they sell them whilst they're at their high, and then they make loads of money and then everyone's goes to zero? Yeah, that's going to happen a million times over. Same way there's going to be a million scams on the internet. But in the long run, is there utility to what the blockchain brings? 100%. So in a world where AI is taking over, is getting better, people are saying AI is going to run the world. Wrong. The smartest people with AI will run the world. The same way that internet didn't run the world. The technology didn't run the world. The smartest people with technology run the world. Elon Musk, Bill Gates, that type of thing. Same thing with AI. So don't be resistant to it. Be understanding of it and how it can work in your benefit, because it's not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere at all. So I think that's definitely a big play for this year, is to understand better AI and how it can assist me, which I'm definitely doing a better job of. but also understanding for people that there is utility in it. Because as the lines get blurred in what's real and what isn't real, and people are saying, this is AI, and is this actually happening? Especially for people who are looking on Facebook and are gullible and don't have the best eyesight, and they see a super realistic video of a bombing in some country. This is where the blockchain becomes even more important, because what the blockchain brings is proof of authenticity, which in the modern world is becoming more important than ever. People are not realizing that element of the blockchain, and that's the gamble or the hypothesis that I'm playing on with Ethereum. Ethereum essentially says that I, as ex-owner, own all these different elements. Maybe it's a receipt of a car, maybe it's the receipt of a piece of art on the digital world or in the physical world, but it shows proof of authenticity in anything. And it can also do the same for videos. So if there is a video which is someone has created, which is of the president saying some outlandish thing, if it doesn't have the traceability back to the original source, which owns the IP and owns the authenticity, then you know it to not be true. So you can see where the utility of this is coming into play. So that is something I want to get better at, leveraging AI this year, and also something I want to get better at understanding, but also important to understand the space. Now, that isn't to say that Ethereum is a guarantee, it's certainly not, but when you look into the theory of network effect, which is essentially a fancy way of saying when one person uses something and then one other person uses something, in very quick time you can get a million user base. It's the same thing that you sort of saw with Facebook, or it's the same thing with word of mouth. One mum goes down the shop and sees this fabric softener on a crazy deal. Sometimes, obviously in today's market it's a little bit different, but in today's market it's now just shown through TikTok, right? That's the word of mouth today, because that is organic word of mouth. It's just TikTok. So secrets are never secrets in today's market. So network effect happens even quicker. So my bet between social networks, organic reach, or at least the algorithms, which is word of mouth, which is echo chambers, and then network effect, and then the blockchain's necessity, and then the fact that Ethereum's already established and already just has a head start. It's not a guarantee to win, but it's got a head start. So that's what I'm betting on in 10 years. And we're already a few years in. So yeah, just sitting tight on that. That's a long-term investment, dollar cost averaging out some things with that. And that's kind of wrapped us up where we are now. We've wrapped up some crazy things in a year, I'm sure. There's loads of things that I missed out that I'll touch upon in the future. Touched upon some goals and some keywords for the upcoming year. And some things I really want to focus on. Like I said, it's going to be mainly the clothing, the food fighters, and Casuals Corner as a whole. Really developing and refining the media outlet. So having just a couple of people that I work with on a close scale, charging a good amount of money for them and having a fantastic product there. And then establishing to build out my community, really focusing on having a really good newsletter, developing a good newsletter this year, and having a digital and a physical product to offer, whether that be within the media section and consultancy, or whether it be more physically with products of clothing and whatnot. So that's everything. So thank you for hanging around, and that's a good little summary before we lead into 2025. And then also I am going to try and do this bi-weekly as well. You can hear the fireworks going off. That's a Happy New Year. Gong hoi fat choi, and keep it casual.